If you're struggling reballing sandwiches, here's the best technique to do it successfully. This is the reballing jig that I use. It is the Mijing stencil. This allows you to apply the paste and peel it off. This is the special reballing paste. This is 158 Celsius. This is the non-magnetic spatula that I use to apply the paste. This is the I2C T20 heater to heat the sandwich and re-sandwich it together. And this is the board we're gonna do today. This is a 14 Pro Max. I've already wicked the perimeter on both sides, so these are ready to go and start the reball process. Now for the 14 Pro Max specifically, I did have to Dremel out a slot for the 5G flex, but these Mijing stencils typically have a slot for it. But for the 14 Pro Max, it doesn't work well, so I Dremeled it and made a bigger slot so it allows us to reball it better. So this is how you put the board. You can see you put it into the alignment post so that it lays flat, and then the 5G flex lays through this little canyon or slots, and then the base is magnetic, so this stencil is going to stick to it like that. Once you align it, you should be able to press it flat and have no rising stencil. Like, it should sit flat against the board. That way you can reball it. See, this is a little slot they put for the flex, but if you put the flex through there, when you lift the stencil, it's not gonna work. You're gonna basically catch the board and it's gonna come off. It's gonna be a problem. So if you can Dremel out a slot for the flex, it'll work a lot better. Now the most important step is the paste. We gotta prepare it so we can get a really good reball. One of the biggest mistakes I had was not handling the paste properly, which I'm gonna show you now. This is a brand new bucket here, so you can see the paste is very wet. So we gotta dry it out a lot. So what I do is once I open it, I peel off the cover, and then we get some paste. Probably need about this much, like a pea size amount. And then you need a paper towel or a clean cloth that you can press this paste into like that, and then you're basically pressing it to dry it out, and you're gonna lose some of it. That's why you want to get a good amount out of the bucket. And it's fine if you get a few fibers of hairs on there, because it won't really affect anything. And then you can see the texture has changed. It's now more of a matte color versus shiny. And then once you get it kind of dry and is no longer being left behind on your towel, paper towel here, then you apply it here. And the trick is, with this paste, only use, if you're gonna reball multiple devices, only use fresh paste each time, unless it's within the same day. So within like a few hours of you doing this. If you leave this overnight, the paste is gonna dry out too much and it's gonna give you a really bad reball. So that was one of my biggest mistakes, is I was using old paste, which would not allow me to do this special reballing technique on these phones. So now that we got the paste on here, actually I think I might need a little more, but let's try it out. So one thing you want to look at is make sure your board pads, you can see them through the stencil. That way you know the board is aligned to the stencil. And let's actually go under the microscope. So you can see there, the pads are all visible and they're flat. I mean, there's not one, those are not flat, but whatever, those are ground. But you can see how it's all flat and aligned and stuff. Then with the paste, you press it down into the stencil and you just go around the stencil. Now this one has no SIM slot, so it will kind of flow over, but that's fine. We can clean it up after. Oh, I'm running low on paste already. And basically I do this twice. So I go over, get it all into every pad, and I'm pressing down and spreading it. One thing is, you know, this spatula is non-magnetic, so we can do this with no issues. If you try to use a metal tool, what's gonna happen is it's gonna stick to the stencil and it's not gonna work well. All right, so you see how doing all this, and then what I do is I'll scrape it up like that. This will kind of recover some of that paste. So we can do it one more time and just press it in hard and spread it. Like press down and slide. Just do this all over every single pad. The point or the goal is to compact the paste to create a little pad, a little like dome shaped pile of paste that is the right size. And then the stencil, you know, the typical reballing principle is that the stencil allows you to fit just the right amount of paste into the hole so that when you take off the stencil or when you flow it, only an even amount of paste is on every hole. Because there's only so much room between the board and the metal stencil, right? So now that we applied it, this is another key step to this. So this is just a brand new clean cloth. Is really thin. It's just like a little towel. And basically, I'm just gonna press it down and wipe across. This really helps, especially if your paste is really wet and you couldn't dry it out much. When you go like that, you'll see this is all the excess paste that was on there. So this is what the stencil should look like. There's all the paste is compacted in there. And yes, we still have a bunch of paste here, but we're not gonna flow this yet. So here's the next step. We're gonna peel this off very fast with no hesitation. If you hesitate, you could mess up the situation and have to redo it again. So just do it one solid motion, which is really easy. I like to go from corner to corner versus instead of going like this, I go like this way from here to here. And what I like to do is hold my finger here to kind of hold everything in place and also allow me to kind of curl it back. And you gotta do it in one motion. And as if the flex was through here, the flex will get caught and then you'll have a problem. So that's why I dug out a cavity for the flex. So let's do it. And look, there's an opening on both sides. So it doesn't matter if it's this way or the other way. I'm gonna grab the stencil and then just peel it off like that. And then you'll see the stencil has no paste left behind. And this is what the board looks like. You can see all the little pads. So let's get rid of that paste that overflowed right here. You just gotta be real careful. It's all in big chunks, so there you go. I got it all out. I'm gonna throw this away. Now let's visually inspect the reballing job, and look at that. You can see all the solder paste is perfectly shaped around every single pad. Look at that, every pad. Now depending, some models, the stencil will be slightly off. So it doesn't matter, as long as you got the little ball of paste on every pad, that'll eventually flow right into place. And let me give you a closer look so you can see. All right, take a look at that. It's kind of hard to see, but it's literally a little mound of paste. And it's all even. So here's what we're gonna do. Now that we've formed all the solder paste, we're gonna use some hot air to reflow the solder paste into solder balls. So I'm using 330 and 25 air. Especially if you're new to this, start with low settings and then you can bump it up as you get more comfortable with this technique. But I'm gonna show you the easy way. So 330 and 25 air, so it's really low heat and airflow, but you just heat it until you start seeing solder balls, and then you start moving the stencil or the hot air. I mean, you can move the hot air, but I like to just move the stencil with my right hand and basically keep my hot air in the same area and just keep flowing. Now, if your paste was too wet, what you'll find is the paste is just kind of spreading out and the solder balls are touching together. Leave it as is, just try it anyway, reflow it, and you'll see that most of the time, even if the paste is all smeared between the solder balls, they'll eventually just form into individual solder ball when you hit it with the hot air. Now I did see one ball here. I'm just gonna manually take that out. And if you see any issues, just manually clean it out. Like there's a blob over here as well. Alright, there you go. So I'm gonna go back to heating it. And just literally go around the whole perimeter. By the way, I'll link to all my tools in the video description down below. So if there's anything specific you need to know, just drop it in the comments. Also, let me know what technique do you guys use. This is the technique that I found gives me the highest success rate versus anything else. I've tried the jig where it clamps the stencil into place and then you just hot air over the stencil. I've tried some other jigs, some other brands, and this one I found is the best one because pretty much all the models will have room for the 5G flex, whereas some of the other tools do not. So if you're gonna try this technique, use a specific stencil, the Mijing Z20, I believe. I will link to it in the video description, and the good news is it's available in the US, but also in China, so like AliExpress or DIY Fix Tool, as well as Injured Gadgets sells it. This specific stencil is the one you want to get. Do not get some of the other brands that are similar. Same with everything else. You know, use the exact ones I mentioned, because even though there's some other tools that are similar, they're not. Even like the paste. I just tried the Mechanic 148, I believe, Celsius paste, and it's just terrible. It doesn't flow nice like this one. It's very, very wet. It does, like, even drying it out, like it still stays really wet, and it's not a good paste for this. 183 Celsius paste that you use for regular reballing and stuff, that one's great from Mechanic. The low melt, the super low melt one for this does not work well. Right now what I'm doing is adding flux. This is the Woozy flux from Edgar, and after I flow all the pads, all the paste into solder balls, I add one more layer of flux here. This is the flux I'm using. I will also link it down below. And this is the paste I was talking about that does not work well. It's really bad. I've tried using it for a while and it just doesn't work well. So trust me, get the ones I recommend. And also, because we have clean paste, we don't have any little debris of solder paste in between, so we don't have to worry about that. If you do have like tiny little solder balls everywhere, I would recommend you clean it with the Q-tip or with the cotton swab, foam swab thing, and just clean it with ISO and clean it really well. Otherwise, like this one is fine. Next step is we're gonna reflow this paste one more time. So now I'm gonna take it off the magnetic base. I'm gonna get the board out. And then I'm gonna place it in my heater. Another reason why to use this heater, it also has space for the 5G flex. Pretty much all the plates for this heater are 5G flex for the US compatible. So another reason why I recommend specific tools and everything, because I use them and they work here in the US for the US models. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna set it to 200, but you can do like maybe like 180. And we're just gonna give it a few minutes, let it heat up, and then let it reflow all those pads, and then we're gonna cool it down. So right now, you hold right to turn on the heat, and by default it's set to 200, and then it'll climb. If you don't do anything, it doesn't automatically start heating. So let's give it a few minutes and we'll be right back. So we reached 180 degrees Celsius, and take a look at the solder balls. They've all formed into shiny solder balls, which you should buy yourself one of these t-shirts if you want to support the channel. So make sure they have all flowed into shiny solder balls. Drop that down below in the comments if you like the way these shiny solder balls look like. Now we got to cool it down. So what we do is hold down left and right. It turns on the fan, and then it's going to cool this down into solid solder balls, which are not going to be shiny. So let's give it a few minutes so this cools down to about 100 degrees, and then we can throw on the top board. This board has already been wicked. Make sure it's clean. Now originally this came in for not charging, and we found the charging IC was bad, so that got replaced, and now we gotta reball the sandwich to get it fully working. One thing about these boards from iPhone 10 and newer, most of them we need to split open to get inside the sandwich to repair them, because a lot of the main chips that fail are inside. So this is why we're going through this process, and this is a really critical skill to have if you want to be able to fix iPhone motherboards. Pretty much all the motherboards that come into our shop are going to be sandwich models, so pretty much they all have to be split open, fixed, and reballed to put back together. Now some issues are just requiring the reball itself. Some issues require split, fix whatever, like a short, replace an IC, whatever, and then reball and put it back together. So I'm just going to clean this really quick because it did look a little sketchy. So what I like to do is soak it in ISO, scrub it against clean cloth. This will make the ISO mixed in with whatever is dirty stick to the clean cloth and leave us behind a super shiny board. If you don't wick it, you might not get consistent results. So that's another key. You gotta make sure you wick it and there's shiny pads like this. Flat and shiny. If they're gray, they're gonna be oxidized and it won't take solder wall. So that's a whole different other thing. Let me know down below in the comments if you wanna see how to deal with oxidized pads. It's not fun, but it is something you have to deal with. Let's take a look. So these look still a little shiny. I'm gonna poke. Look at that. It's almost there. I feel like give it a few more, like a minute or two left. We're at 100 degrees, although sometimes you gotta go a little lower, maybe like 80. But you can see how some of these are like a gray. Yeah, these are gray for sure. These are a little shiny. Yeah, see, I touch it and it kind of changed texture, so it's still not ready. But one key thing here is there's a layer of flux that is coating all the solder balls, and there's no flux on the top board. So this is why you need to have this layer of flux. One, it flowed all the pads into really nice solder balls, and two, that flux is what's going to be used for flowing those solder joints together with the top board. And by the way, if you need any motherboard repairs, whether you're a repair shop or just it's your personal phone, we do offer mail-in service. You can see my website down below, vccboardrepairs.com, or you can go to vccbr.com as well. It's a shorter version of the same site. And you can still see a few shiny ones here, so you know it's not ready yet. Look, all these turn gray. These are all gray, so I think I would say it's pretty safe now to put the top board on. Top board is clean, and what I do is I try to line it up as best I can, but just kind of throw it on there and then use my tweezers to bump whatever into place, and then just trying to align it. So what I look for is the top board kind of covering the bottom board. See how right here we can see a little bit of the yellow? That yellow line right there, right here, that's the bottom board. So what I want to do is kind of push this down. Also, I like to look through the screw post hole and kind of use that as a alignment guide. And it doesn't have to be 100% perfectly aligned. As long as it's good 80-90% aligned, then you're good. All right, so that's good right now. So I'm gonna turn this back on, holding right. What which we are at 73, and I'm gonna set it to 200 because this is, although it's low melt 158, you have to go above that temperature so it's enough to flow and heat everything. Because remember, we're not working in a vacuum where it's only the paste by itself. We're working with other stuff that sucks away heat from where we want the heat to reach. So you got to go above that heat setting, that temperature, so that that temperature reaches that point you're trying to reach. I don't know if that makes sense, but you got to go higher than the desired or the temperature in the specifications of the paste. So now we just got to wait. So I'll be back. Let's give it a minute here to heat up. All right, we're at 200 degrees, and if you bump this top board gently, you can see it's kind of bouncing, whereas the bottom board stays fixed. That means the solder joints have flowed. Now there's not much room to move or bump the board because of the screw post, but it is bumping. Another key thing to look for is the smoke from the flux. If there's smoke coming out, then you know the flux is burning and you're good. So I would say this is good. I'm gonna press and hold the left and right on the heater to turn on the fan and cool it down. So now we wait. So typically around, I would say maybe 80 degrees or so, that's when we can actually touch the board to remove it off the heater, and hopefully we're fixed. All right, so now we're at 80-ish degrees. I'm gonna find somewhere on the bottom board to try to lift it up. Now, because I don't know if for sure the solder is all molten, has cooled down, I gotta do it carefully. Keeping in mind the board is sitting on posts. So there's posts that the board is sitting through, so you can't just go sideways. You gotta go up, out of the post and out of the way. So keep that in mind. So the board could get caught. Oh, I just got caught right there. One trick is to do forklift style, where you use the tweezers to kind of scoop up under it and lift it up, and then use something like this, like a little steel block, which I will link down below, to cool it down, and just give it another like minute or so to let it cool down. The steel block will absorb the heat because they're both trying to reach equilibrium. So the cold block will heat up, the hot board will cool down, and they'll basically meet at room temperature. So that's kind of what happens here. One thing you'll notice is if you use steel blocks like these, they're really cold. Technically not cold, but they have more cooling effect, so they suck away heat from stuff. So anytime you have like a hot board, throw it on a steel block and it'll cool down your board a lot faster. Another trick is you can just, at this point it has cooled down a bit, we can drop some ISO. That will also cool down the board, and it's not sizzling or doing anything else. So that means it has reached room temperature, or at least has cooled down significantly. Now I'm just gonna clean it up a little bit with the ISO. I wanna scrub the sides. Usually you get a lot of paste and flux on the sides. Just careful with the 5G flex. In case you don't know, here in the US, we have this stupid flex here in the way, which my understanding is it's Verizon, millimeter wave, 5G, ultra wideband or something, 5G, which is supposed to give you really fast internet, but you need to be near very special towers to even get that signal. So starting on 12 and newer, you're gonna deal with these flex, and a lot of people don't realize it's there, so they'll damage them. But you still get 5G, regular 5G without it. So if you ever damage it, keep that in mind. All right, cleaned it up. All right, so I've cleaned it up, and we're gonna blow some of that ISO that's on there. So you can see the solder balls are there. You can see the gap is really small, which is what you want. You don't want a large gap you have any gaps, that means you warped the board. Typically, I see that from too much heat, or if the phone was smashed really bad, then it's going to be a pain to deal with. So let me know down below in the comments if you want to see a video on how to deal with the warped board, and I'll try to make it soon. If you guys have any suggestions for video ideas, I'm always open to hear them. Doesn't mean I'll do them, but you know, sometimes it's hard to know whether I could even make a video on that, because I need a specific, I need that case to be here, you know. So if we're asking for a specific repair, well, someone needs to send me that repair. So a lot of people asking me to do like memory upgrades on Android phones, but nobody's paying me to do those, so I'm not going to do it for no reason. So let me just clean up this flux here on the side. You know, all these videos you see me make, they're actual customers' devices, so I only do customer devices here. They're real repairs. All right, so next thing I do after reballing, so we want to make sure we don't end up with the short, and we do that with a DC power supply and a boot cable. So this is the DT80, which is no longer available, so don't ask. And I'm gonna push power to see if we get any current drop before prompt to boot. That will tell us if we have a main short, which can happen if you reball it wrong. No. So you make sure it zeroes out and it stays zero, then you're good. Next, we're gonna prompt to boot to make sure we have normal, healthy boot consumption. And I'm gonna short the power button pin to ground, which I believe is this one. No, it's gonna be over here. So that looks like it prompted to boot, but I didn't hold it long enough. Let me try it again. Power button pin, hold it, prompt to boot behavior looks normal. It starts in the 50s and then it's in the 120s, and then eventually shoots up and then it keeps going. So if you're gonna do any kind of board level diagnostics, knowing what normal boot consumption is supposed to look like is key to all of this. And this looks like normal boot consumption. So now let's put it in the housing. All right, so now the final test is to plug it into charge and see what the USB meter does, which it looks normal. Now I don't know if the battery is good, because this did come in for, oh, look at that. Oh, but looks like the OLED is damaged. But look at that, we have low battery symbol showing signs of life, but we do have to give it a few minutes to charge up. So let's let that charge up and then we'll be back. And we're back with a working phone. So let's take a look. It is charging at 2 amps. All right, well, apparently the pin code provided is not the right one, but let's see. It's definitely working. Touch is working. We can't see the notification, the status. Let me try this. Oh, this has no SIM slot either. But the fact that it does show SOS, that means at least baseband is working. If it wasn't working, it would say no service or searching, and something would happen. Usually if you have a bad reball, you would also get a pop-up that says cellular update failed, and there'll be other signs that it's not working. But as of right now, it seems to be working. It is charging. We didn't have any issues. It's not overheating. The boot consumption was all normal. So as of right now, I'm feeling pretty confident with this reball, and it should be fixed. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you guys let me know down below in the comments. Also, let me know what you guys learned, what technique you use, what tools do you use. Like I said, I will link to all the different tools I use in today's video, like the stencil, which does come with every model that has a sandwich. So iPhone 10 to 15 Pro Max. This one is the i2C T20 heater, which also has plates for every model, including the 15 series, which I have another video on my channel, which I'll post it right here, right now. So appreciate everyone watching here to the end. I'll see you guys in the next one.